He shouted, "Get out of here, you ugly woman," and threw wine on her. As the president of a major beauty group, I had decided to acquire a certain manufacturer for $52 million as part of a large-scale business expansion. I had hoped to foster good relations by hosting a social gathering, but my wife, whom I had sent ahead, came home crying after having wine thrown on her. Furious, I demanded to know who had been so disrespectful to her. Shockingly, it turned out to be the president of the manufacturer. Upon investigating, I uncovered a hidden dark side to him, with scandal after scandal surfacing. Enraged at the insult to my wife, I stormed into the venue and declared the cancellation of the contract. Amid the chaos, the manufacturer's president grew increasingly desperate to protect himself, but eventually lost his temper and started yelling. "You try marrying a headstrong woman like that, you'd lose your mind too." At that moment, his wife appeared from behind, escalating the situation even further. And now, here's to Matt's appointment as president and to new beginnings. Cheers. Cheers. Several hostesses cheered along with the toast. As we clinked our glasses together and drank the liquor that had been poured, the tension eased a little. I am Matt Reed, 32 years old. I have just been appointed president of the beauty company where I had been working. Tonight's celebration was organized for me. That said, only Mr. Morris, the outgoing president, and a few hostesses were present. It was a small, intimate gathering, which honestly relieved me, as it kept the pressure from feeling overwhelming. The reason the party was held at a nighttime venue was simple. It was the place where Mr. Morris and I had first met. Let's go back a dozen years or so. Right after graduating high school, I started working as a busboy at this upscale club. Normally, people my age would still be under their parents' care, heading off to college or trade school, but unfortunately, I had no adults I could rely on and had to fend for myself. My father had disappeared when I was in elementary school. I still have no idea why he left so suddenly. Even when I asked my mother, she never gave me a clear answer. In my hazy memories, he wasn't a bad person. In fact, I even think I was fond of him. Still, the reality was that he had abandoned his wife and young child. After that, my mother did her best, not overly devoted, but enough to raise me on her own. Perhaps due to the stress, she often sought comfort in relationships with different men, constantly dating and breaking up. Then, during my senior year of high school, she left with some man and never contacted me again. Naturally, a mere kid like me had no money to pursue higher education. Without any relatives to turn to, I had to start from scratch, earning just enough to survive each day. That was when the nightlife caught my eye. The pay was much higher than daytime jobs, which seemed very appealing. I had only a vague idea from TV shows and dramas about what working as a busboy involved, but armed with my youth, I dove into the nightlife industry. Luckily, I had plenty of stamina, and by diligently handling countless tasks, I gradually earned the favor of the manager, Megan. I'm sure I was a handful, overwhelmed by the many new things I had to learn, but I was working seriously while gaining basic social skills. Then, one day, something happened. Mr. Morris, president of a nationwide beauty group, came to the club. According to Megan, he was a top client of the club and had a great reputation among the staff. Hearing that, I watched Mr. Morris from a distance and saw that he did seem polite and easygoing, generously ordering bottles. Since it was an upscale club to begin with, I had always thought the customers generally maintained a certain level of class. But even among them, he stood out with a unique presence, almost as if he radiated a special kind of aura. It made me realize that top executives of major companies really are on another level. But then, the usually relaxed atmosphere drastically changed. An unwelcome guest arrived. "It's your fault my life is ruined." Suddenly, a loud, angry voice echoed through the club, followed by the crashing sound of glass breaking. The hostesses let out small screams in response. When the staff and I all turned our heads toward the noise, we saw a man standing in front of Mr. Morris, a man who must have slipped in unnoticed, now clearly agitated. "Calm down. Causing a scene here won't solve anything. I'm always willing to listen if you want to talk. Shut up. This is bad. Despite Mr. Morris's attempts to calm him, the man's rage was uncontrollable. When the man grabbed a nearby liquor bottle, I instinctively sensed what he intended to do next. Before I knew it, I was sprinting toward him, reaching him just before he could swing the bottle. Desperately trying to stop him, I threw my arms around him and wrestled him into submission. The man put up a fierce struggle, making it hard to hold him down, but with the help of the other busboys who rushed over, we managed to overpower him without anyone getting hurt. Thanks to you, we avoided a disaster. Thank you so much. Are you hurt? Mr. Morris bowed his head and looked me over with concern. When I told him it was just a little spilled drink on my clothes, he visibly relaxed. Megan called the police, and the intruder, who turned out to be a former employee of Mr. Morris's company, was promptly taken into custody. He had apparently been fired recently for committing fraud within the company. Mr. Morris, looking troubled but still gentle, shrugged as he explained that the man had likely been holding a grudge. Still, you showed a lot of courage for someone so new here. You seem very young. Do you mind if I ask if there's a reason you're working here? Well, it's a bit embarrassing. Feeling comfortable with his kind demeanor, I briefly explained my past and how I had ended up here. Mr. Morris listened carefully, his expression turning thoughtful. After a moment of silence, he rubbed his chin and then made a proposal. How about this only if you are willing, of course. Based on what I saw tonight, I'd like to ask if you would become my secretary. What? Your secretary? I was shocked by the sudden offer. I never expected that working as a busboy would lead to a personal job offer from the president of a major company. Of course, you don't have to decide right now. To be honest, it's less of a secretary position and more like a bodyguard role. We can discuss the details later. I'd just be happy if you would consider it. Sure. The offer felt so unreal that my response came out awkwardly, but Mr. Morris simply laughed good-naturedly. And so, through an unexpected twist of fate, I suddenly found myself employed by a major corporation. Maybe to Mr. Morris it was just a whim, but to me it was an act of immense kindness. He patiently taught a young man with almost no social experience how to work and grow, earning admiration from everyone around me. They treated me very well, and I owed him more than I could ever repay. Determined to repay him through hard work, I devoted myself fully to my job. Years later, Mr. Morris, having named me as his successor, arranged this secret celebration at the place where we first met. Although none of the hostesses I used to know still worked there, Megan was still around and had joined the celebration. I can't believe it. Our little fledgling is taking over your company, Megan said. I'm the most surprised, honestly, I replied. I bet you are. It had been quite a while since I had last chatted with Megan, who laughed brightly with a cheerful clatter. Even after I left the club, I had visited this place several times with Mr. Morris, but recently, I had been too busy with the transition work to come by at all. There are a lot of new faces here. Most of them are people I'm meeting for the first time, I said, glancing around at the hostesses. The young woman sitting beside me tonight was also someone new I had never seen before. She had an open, cheerful smile that left a good impression. When I spoke to her, I found out she was relatively new to the nightlife industry. My name is Natalie. It's a pleasure to meet you, she said. After a bit of conversation, I gathered that she was probably in her mid-20s and was an excellent listener. Despite her youth, the way she spoke showed a maturity and emotional strength that suggested a wealth of life experience. Curious, I asked Natalie why she had started working at a club. Actually, my father fell seriously ill when I was very young, so I had to quit school after middle school to take care of him. I kept working while providing care, but I found the pay was much better in the nightlife industry. Also, here, they don't care about your education background, which was a huge relief for me. I regretted halfway through that I might have asked something difficult to talk about, but by the time she finished, Natalie had returned to her bright, endearing smile. Everyone's life is filled with different events. Among them, How many people can face hardships without becoming pessimistic, keeping their heads up and smiling? At the very least, I had not been able to smile the way she could. Perhaps it was inevitable that I would be drawn to Natalie, who had a brilliance I lacked. However, this was a high-end club, and I was a customer while she was a hostess. I told myself to respect our roles and suppress the feelings that had begun to stir in my heart. Funny how all that happened. Time really does fly, I murmured. Across from me, Natalie, who was enjoying her meal, smiled warmly. Are you reminiscing again about when we first met? You always do that when you drink, she said teasingly. I'm just savoring my happiness. I'm the luckiest man alive to have such a wonderful wife, I replied. Though she pretended to be exasperated, she didn't seem to mind hearing the story again. We had just gotten married. We were newlyweds, still basking in the happiest days of our marriage. Ever since meeting Natalie at that club, I had carried feelings for her in my heart, but by pure chance, we ran into each other at a movie theater on our day off, and sensing it was my opportunity, I nervously asked to exchange contact information, fully prepared for the possibility of being rejected. To my surprise, she accepted, and from there, the distance between us began to shrink. After going on several dates, our relationship blossomed into something more. And after about 2 years of dating, we finally got married. Upon marrying, Natalie retired from being a hostess and now helps me with my work and between caring for her father. Both personally and professionally, life could not be better right now. All right, but you need to go easy on the drinks tonight. You have that social gathering tomorrow, remember? With her playful but concerned reminder, my mind snapped back from 2 years ago to the present. That's right, tomorrow was an important day. Ever since becoming president, I had been working on my first major business expansion. I decided to acquire a cosmetics manufacturer for $52 million in hopes of developing our own line of beauty products. We had commissioned a research firm to investigate the company's financials, and so far, there were no major issues. The only rumor that surfaced was that the company's president, Aaron Harris, was apparently under the thumb of his wife, who came from a prestigious local family. Hearing that even a company president could be dominated by his wife made him feel strangely relatable. However, since I had only discussed business with Mr. Harris, I still didn't know much about him personally. In an effort to build a strong relationship moving forward, I had arranged a social event bringing together employees from both companies. Right. Then I'll make this my last drink tonight, I said, finishing the whiskey left in my glass, feeling satisfied as I wrapped up dinner. Though much of it was due to sheer luck, I had been blessed with good people and a good environment, and my life now felt full. That's why I didn't hold any resentment toward my parents. Maybe I had craved affection at times, but I chose to believe they each had their own unavoidable circumstances. Humming to myself, I climbed into bed and grabbed my planner to double-check tomorrow's schedule. As I flipped through the pages, a single yellowed photograph slipped out and landed on my chest. Oops, better be careful where I tuck things in, I said, picking it up. It was a family photo from a time when I still enjoyed the happiness of being a child, a time I barely remembered now. I could now only see my father's face through this old photo. Thanks to this one picture, I was able to hold on to memories that were fading day by day. My mother was probably doing her best somewhere with another man, but as for my father, even when I found myself wondering, the people in the photo, of course, remained silent, and on lonely days like this, all I could do was gaze at my memories. I carefully tucked the photo back into my planner, closed my eyes, and told myself I needed to get some good rest for tomorrow. Tomorrow's party would be one that Natalie would be attending with me. Tonight, I would fall asleep looking forward to seeing my wife in her party dress. Savoring the happiness I had now, I drifted into a deep sleep. The next morning arrived. Full of excitement, we finished getting ready and were just about to leave the house. Natalie had chosen a soft, slightly muted pink dress, and it suited her so perfectly that she looked absolutely stunning. While we were doing a final check to make sure we hadn't forgotten anything, the phone suddenly rang. Hello, this is Matt speaking. Is this Matt? Good afternoon. This is Oliver from the investigation agency you hired. The caller was an investigator from the firm I had asked to look into the internal affairs of the manufacturer. Oliver was an older man, probably in his 60s, and perhaps due to his line of work, he had a somewhat shadowy air about him. Still, I trusted him completely. He was skilled and reliable. The investigation should have been mostly wrapped up, so I wondered what could have prompted this sudden call. As if to answer my doubts, Oliver carefully chose his words as he spoke. Something urgent has come to light that I thought I should inform you of right away. Would you happen to have a little time now? Something urgent? I hesitated, torn between the importance of the upcoming social gathering and the seriousness implied by Oliver's tone. But if he said it was urgent, it must really be something I needed to know. Natalie, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be late. Something urgent just came up that I have to deal with. Oh, really? Will you still make it in time for the opening speech? I'm not sure. If I can't, could you stand in for me and handle things until I get there? All right, I'll wait for you at the venue. Natalie's ability to handle situations like this was incredibly reassuring. Even stepping in as an acting president on short notice didn't faze her. Thanking my wife, I turned my attention back to the phone call. All right then, please give me the report. As for the location, well, since there isn't much time, could you come to my house? I arranged for the emergency meeting to take place at my home, and after seeing Natalie off, waited anxiously for Oliver to arrive. Judging by his serious tone, it was unlikely to be good news. I hoped it wasn't something that would cause major problems later. As I was thinking that, the doorbell rang sooner than expected. It seemed he had been nearby when he called. Oliver, good to see you. Please come in. I invited him into the sitting room, and, feeling a heavy sense of tension, listened carefully to his report. About an hour had passed since Oliver arrived. As I listened to his findings, the small sense of unease I had at first steadily grew into something much larger. So, this is what's been going on, I said grimly. Yes, I'm truly sorry I wasn't able to uncover it sooner. We sat facing each other, both wearing serious expressions, the room wrapped in a heavy silence. But that silence was abruptly shattered by a loud bang. Bang! Startled, I realized it was the sound of a door being flung open in a panic. What happened, Natalie? Are you okay? I rushed to the entrance, and there stood my wife, who had left just a short while ago, now gasping for breath. Tears streamed steadily down from her eyes. A large red stain, which hadn't been there when she left, now spread dramatically across her pink dress. I'm sorry. I had to leave the party. Don't worry about that. Just tell me what happened. Seeing me, Natalie seemed to relax a little, and with even bigger tears spilling down her cheeks, she slowly began to speak. As soon as I walked into the venue, I ran into a former customer who used to harass me. I had reported him back then, and the club banned him, which must have made him furious. The moment he recognized me, he shouted, "Get out of here, you ugly woman," and threw wine at me. That's unforgivable. Even though Natalie bravely fulfilled her role by delivering the opening speech despite her ruined dress, the shock from being so cruelly humiliated must have been overwhelming. She must have been terrified to be screamed at in front of everyone. My blood boiled with rage. There is no excuse for wounding someone so deeply with words and actions like that, especially when it stemmed from nothing but bitter resentment. I couldn't help but blame myself for not being there when she needed me most. What kind of man was he? Do you remember his name? I asked as gently as I could, not wanting to put any more strain on my shaken wife. Now that she was back home and had calmed down a little, the tears in her eyes were finally starting to dry. I think his name was Aaron Harris. Aaron? I raised my voice in shock at the name she mentioned. If I hadn't misheard, that was the same name as the president of the cosmetics manufacturer. And it seemed that surprise wasn't missed by others. The investigator in the sitting room, wearing a grave expression, called out, "Matt," and joined the conversation. Oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you had a guest. How embarrassing. It's all right, Natalie. We were actually just receiving a report about Aaron. What? What do you mean by that? But there was no time to explain everything to her. I pulled out my phone and, burning with rage, immediately called Aaron. However, no matter how many times I called, he refused to pick up. Damn it, I'll just have to go there myself. Would you mind if I came along? I believe I could be of some assistance. Yes, please do, I muttered, unable to hide my irritation, and the capable investigator quickly picked up on the situation and offered his help. Over the past few days, he had uncovered the darker side of Aaron and had been digging deeper. From what I had heard, his behavior toward Natalie was likely just the tip of the iceberg. It was clear we needed to reconsider the deal. I got into the car with the sharp-minded investigator and my wife, who still hadn't fully grasped the situation, and we headed toward the venue. Oh, I thought you had already left. Just a cheap little hostess. When we arrived at the gathering, Aaron, who already seemed quite drunk, glanced at Natalie and immediately began to hurl insults. I quickly shielded my trembling wife behind me and clenched my fists tightly. His attitude was a complete departure from the professional demeanor he had shown before. He was far beyond the point where drunkenness could excuse his behavior. I heard you insulted my wife, Mr. Harris. Such behavior is absolutely unforgivable. The deal is off. I marched straight toward him, my voice fierce and commanding. Wife! The middle-aged man gasped in shock. From his earlier remarks, it was clear he had assumed Natalie was just a hostess hired for the event. Finding out that she was actually the wife of a business partner sent him into a panic. Sweat broke out on his forehead as he desperately tried to figure out a way to salvage the situation, his alcohol-fogged mind struggling to keep up. However, after only a few seconds, he shamelessly recovered from the shock and faced me defiantly. Mr. Reed, surely you don't think you can simply cancel the deal over something like this? Many personnel have already been mobilized, and canceling now would cause significant disruption to both of our company's plans. It was an obvious attempt at intimidation, using the threat of losses. His sheer brazenness made my blood boil even more. During our previous meetings, he had never shown this side. Clearly, he was far more calculating than I had realized. The gathering, once filled with a warm atmosphere, had now turned into a battleground, sparks flying between us. Humph. Speaking out emotionally like that will only endanger your own position, Mr. Reed. You've got some nerve. While I was trying to come up with a rebuttal, another attack came flying at me. He was probably trying to provoke me and make me lose my composure. The way he raised his eyebrows mockingly and acted as if he were the calm one was utterly infuriating. I almost fell into his trap and lashed out verbally, but thankfully, someone standing next to me intervened just in time. Mr. Reed, if I may suggest something, both of our companies mainly offer products and services targeted at women. Given that, Ms. Harris's recent behavior poses a serious risk to the company's image. How about proceeding with the contract while removing only him from the picture? The dependable investigator had thrown me a lifeline. I immediately accepted the suggestion. I see. That's a good idea. As you said, Mr. Harris is a walking risk. It's only natural for the company to take care of such matters. What are you saying? Are you planning to remove me, the president of this manufacturer? It was just one mistake. Aaron, who had been regaining his composure, started to panic again. The glare he threw at Oliver seemed to scream, "Mind your own business." What followed were desperate words of self-preservation, unbearable to hear. It was because I was drinking. I would never behave like that under normal circumstances. So, since it happened at a drinking event, can't we just agree to keep it between us? He glanced around frantically, trying to find allies, but the stares from the gathered people were cold. No matter how much he tried to save face with pathetic excuses, no one stepped forward to support him. With all due respect, Mr. Harris, upon investigating your company, we have found that this incident is not an isolated case. Oliver stated plainly, then pulled out his phone and played a certain video. It was the scene from earlier, where Natalie was splashed with wine and insulted. "What do you think you're doing? Trying to blackmail me with that?" "No, this isn't blackmail. The video was recorded by one of my associates. It has been edited for privacy considerations and sent to your company's employees by email, along with a note asking, if you have experienced similar incidents, please contact us." We've already received about 5 replies. When had this investigator managed to prepare so thoroughly? I was simply astounded by how calmly and methodically each move had been laid out. Seeing Aaron, who now looked completely pale, it was clear he knew exactly what he was guilty of. "As expected, I cannot work with someone like you. Your fate will be decided immediately after your company comes under our control." I declared it firmly and without hesitation. Aaron ground his teeth in frustration, his face twisted into a furious scowl, looking as if he might lash out at any moment. But I knew that showing any fear would be a loss, so I stood my ground with unwavering resolve. After a heavy silence, Aaron finally erupted, shouting as if to vent all his pent-up anger. "Why? Why does nothing ever go right for me? Why do women always get in my way? You try marrying a strong-willed woman. You'd lose your mind too," he shouted in one breath, then drained the rest of his drink and slammed his fist down on the table with a loud bang. He clearly harbored a deep resentment toward women. The veins bulging at his temples were a visible testament to the stress he claimed to feel. However, his raging attitude was soon shattered by the arrival of an unexpected figure. The sharp, brisk sound of high heels clicked closer from behind Aaron. "Who are you calling a strong-willed woman? Eek, Kimberly? What are you doing here?" At the sudden voice directed at him, the middle-aged man let out a startled cry and shrank back immediately. I quickly realized that this must be Kimberly, the famed daughter of a distinguished family and Aaron's strong-willed wife. Just as I thought what perfect timing it was, Oliver leaned in and whispered. I asked her to come. Another brilliant move on his part. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Reed. I'm Kimberly, Aaron's wife. I overheard something about a video. Does this incident involve my husband?" Kimberly greeted me politely, but got straight to the point. Her confident, commanding presence made it clear why she was known as strong-willed. From what I had heard, she was currently serving as an executive vice president at her father's company. And it wasn't a position she had inherited through favoritism. She had earned it through her own abilities. She had a reputation for being exceptionally sharp and was widely rumored to be the company's next president. Aaron had originally worked at her father's company as well. I had no idea how he had managed to win her over, and frankly, I couldn't understand why she had ever chosen him. I nodded in response to her question and signaled to Oliver to show her the video. As she watched the footage of her husband assaulting a woman he didn't even know and then viciously insulting her, her eyes widened in shock. "Is the woman in this video her?" "Yes." Natalie, startled by the sudden question, answered timidly. Recognizing the evidence of her husband's violence, Kimberly immediately bowed her head. "I sincerely apologize. My husband's outrageous behavior and words. It must have been terribly frightening for you. Please accept my deepest apologies." Her voice, filled with pain and remorse, showed a genuine concern for Natalie. It was clear to everyone that Kimberly was offering a sincere apology from the bottom of her heart. Natalie, too, seemed to accept her apology, though she fidgeted nervously, unsure of how to respond to the woman who kept bowing deeply before her. Meanwhile, Aaron stood trembling before his wife, unable to say a word. He clutched his head as if realizing there was no way to talk his way out of this, revealing his true selfish nature. I asked Kimberly to please lift her head. "I truly don't know how to properly apologize. We would, of course, like to compensate for your damaged dress, and I will contact you again about that. I bear some responsibility for this situation as well, and I intend to have a long, serious talk with my husband once we get home. Actually, Mrs. Harris, there's something else I need to tell you." I interrupted Kimberly just as she looked ready to grab Aaron and drag him out. She looked momentarily puzzled, but quickly said, "Please go ahead," inviting me to continue. It was time to reveal the hidden side of Aaron that Oliver had uncovered during his investigation. From the moment I heard the report at home, I had decided to tell her. Your husband has been plotting to bring you down. At those words, everyone except me and the investigator gasped. Bring Kimberly down? Don't be ridiculous. Aaron, who had been shrinking into himself, suddenly flared up, snorting in anger. But after everything that had happened, his credibility was already in ruins. Not even his own wife stood with him now. My voice alone echoed through the silent venue. Aaron had a strong tendency to look down on women, and many, including Natalie, had suffered because of him. Whether it was because of the stress he claimed Kimberly caused him or not, it was clear that he would lash out in anger whenever a woman didn't bend to his will. And the one he resented most of all was his own wife, Kimberly. Clearly, having his fragile pride trampled day after day had festered into hatred. Eventually, Aaron had begun offering money to club employees, ordering them to lure his wife into a scandalous situation to ruin her reputation. When I revealed this, even Kimberly, strong as she was left speechless. It was no wonder finding out your own husband was plotting to destroy you was a devastating shock. I know it's not my place, but I highly recommend you take action before anything worse happens. Thank you for your concern. You believe that liar over me, Kimberly? Kimberly's shoulders trembled with anger as she fully understood the situation. She silenced her husband with nothing more than a single cold glance. Completely cowed by her fierce spirit, Aaron couldn't utter another protest. Now that he has proven himself to be a man of nothing but empty words, I think I'll be filing for divorce as early as tomorrow. There was not a hint of hesitation in her resolute voice. Aaron hung his head, utterly defeated by what was effectively a public divorce declaration. He had lost both his position and his family in a single day. It was nothing more than the natural consequences of a life spent hurting others. And yet, I still hadn't finished holding him accountable for what he had done to Natalie. You still haven't apologized directly to my wife yet, Mr. Harris. It might have felt like pressing him further, but he had to take responsibility for what he had done. At my urging, the broken man finally lowered his head, his eyes vacant, and at last apologized to Natalie. I'm sorry. A month later. Despite everything, we successfully completed the acquisition of the cosmetics manufacturer as originally planned. Of course, after all the chaos that had erupted, Aaron's arrogant behavior towards several women within the company became widely known, and before we even needed to take any action, he was forced to step down as president before the contract was finalized. The fire only lit what was already smoldering, said the woman who took over as the new president of the cosmetics company, cutting him off sharply. Something about her reminded me of Kimberly, and perhaps she, too, had been one of Aaron's many victims. In any case, the rest of the company was full of decent, respectable people, and I was satisfied with the decision to bring them under our umbrella. According to rumors, Aaron, having been kicked out of his home, fled town in disgrace. Even if he wanted to find another job, betraying the daughter of a local dignitary had left his name far too tarnished. In this area, where Kimberly's father held strong influence, there was hardly any company that would be willing to hire Aaron now. It seemed only fitting that he would be forced to start over in a new place. No one cared anymore about what had become of him. Welcome home. There's a package for you. I put it on the table. As always, my lovely wife greeted me warmly when I got home. I had worried that what happened that day might leave lasting scars, but Natalie had fully regained her cheerful spirit. Thanks. I wonder who it's from. Oh, it's from Oliver. I checked the sender and immediately thought of the man who had worked so hard to resolve the crisis back then. He was a sharp, forward-thinking professional. If anything happened again, I would definitely want to hire him. I opened the slightly large box and found a bouquet of flowers, preserved so that they would last a long time. My eyes dropped to the message card included inside. It was a real pleasure to work with you, even for a short while. Congratulations on your business expansion. Something about the congratulatory message felt strange. The tone was much more casual than when we had worked together, almost familiarly so. I stared at the card, rereading the sentences over and over. There was something nostalgic about the handwriting. Where had I seen it before? No way. A sudden possibility struck me. With my heart racing, I pulled out my favorite planner from my work bag, and from it, I retrieved an old, worn photograph. It was a keepsake I had never been able to throw away, something that had been left behind at my childhood home. On the back of the photo, in the same distinctive handwriting, were the words, "Happy third birthday, Matt." I looked back and forth between the message card and the photograph, then quietly closed my eyes. Why didn't you ever tell me, Dad? Was it really just coincidence? When I tried to contact the investigation agency later, I was told that Oliver had already resigned. I wondered when he had realized the truth. And what must he have felt, standing quietly beside me all that time? There are so many things I want to ask him, so many things I want to tell him, and a bouquet and a few words of congratulations could never fill the gaping hole left in my heart. Even now, dreaming of the day we might meet again, I sit and gaze at the unfading flowers and the old photograph.